What? Oh no, I wasn't in. I wasn't in there the whole time. I wasn't. My audio wasn't in there the whole time. Oh my goodness, I'm about to. uh, uh, I'm out of it. Here's this is the crazy thing, bro. I was talking about something, and then I noticed like it was grayed out, and I'm like, why is it so gray? And I pushed the button, and then all of a sudden my audio cut on. The audio was not on the entire time I was talking. Oh my goodness, I'm I'm wiped out. That's how you know I'm in a bad place. WG Phil, how you doing? So now I forgot what I was talking about. Or I was talking about Dynamite. Dynamite's rating being absolutely pathetic. They blamed the GOP debate and a Donald Trump rally, which is absolutely laughable. You know, it's real stupid. It is really stupid. Um, no, the AEW fan base is not going to be affected by the Republican Party. It's not going to be affected by the Republican Party. I can promise you that. Leith Elsie asked an important question. Do you have advice for writing scholarship essays? Do you think they're even worth it? Yes. My advice for writing a scholarship essay is to do the best you can, but it depends on what the essay is for. For instance, what is the scholarship? If you don't want to give me like a direct correlation about what it's about, you can um, you can give me like the general idea. But typically, when you write an essay, you have to come up with a concept, with a statement, and then you you have to make sure you support it with facts and evidence, as much evidence as you can, and do some critical thinking. You know, don't just put block quotes in there. The weird thing is, I think they actually stopped people from doing that. Like in college, like that was some horrible stuff I used to see when I used to help people write. Is that they would just cut and paste, just put quotations on it and throw it in the citation box and be like, "Well, I did it." Like you just copied and pasted this half a whole paragraph and threw it in there. That don't work. Um, it was odd, but as long as you have a solid idea, you have some supporting evidence, try to use as much in the way of primary sources as possible if you don't have any access to it, and secondary sources will work out just fine. But it would depend on what it's about. If it's about you, you know, you can still use sources if it's about you. Like if they asking you, what would you do with this money, or what would you do with this opportunity, or what this opportunity means to you, you still have an opportunity to make that thing work. WG Phil says, "What's up with Booker T and almost every black wrestler disliking Ahmed Johnson? Ahmed Johnson sounds miserable." I don't know. I thought that Ahmed Johnson comment about him almost getting into a fight with Booker T or something, I thought that was old. Like, I didn't pay attention to it because I didn't think it was new. I thought it was like 10 years old. I didn't know people still did interviews with Ahmed Johnson. Again, I did a video on Ahmed Johnson 1 about when he called Stone Cold Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels a racist, and how he got into he wanted to fight The Rock or something like that. For it was ridiculous stuff. But apparently, Ahmed Johnson did have a lot of problems with quite a few black wrestlers backstage. I think him and D'Lo Brown got into a fight. I know him and The Rock had issues. Him and Ron Simmons had some issues too. I know he went to WCW. I think him and Booker T had issues. Let's take a look at this while you guys brought it up. Who is in my new profile pic? It is Adam Cole. It is Rob Schamberger did a portrait of Undisputed Era, and I just basically clipped the Adam Cole part and then recolored it. So he's the new logo for a little while. Basically until I come up with something else. I wanted to change it at the beginning of the new year, but I couldn't think of anything. I got tired of looking at it, so I just changed it. It's not the. It's probably going to end up being temporary until I come up with something else. Um, there's an article from the Sportster, why Ahmed Johnson is so hated by wrestlers. Huh. Ahmed Johnson was a talented wrestler who could have been a big star, but injuries caused him to lose his push in WWE. Johnson didn't get along with the Nation of Domination, including leaders like The Rock and Farouk, and had several backstage altercations. Wrestlers like Mark Henry and Steve Austin have called out Johnson for lying and making false claims, undermining his credibility in the industry. So those are the big ideas here. And that sounds about right. I mean, I haven't heard too much of anything that come out of Ahmed Johnson's mouth that I actually believe. So it's hard. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that he seems to just not be very well liked. So I found the Booker T, an article of Booker T talking about. This is from December 2023. I thought this was old. So Booker T says, "Brother, I got a dojo for us." Wait a minute. It says, Ahmed Johnson straight up challenged Booker T to a fight. The former WWE superstar said that he has a time and location for the confrontation to go down. "Brother, I got a dojo for us. If you want to get to the streets with this, let's do it. Because I didn't appreciate what he said. And before you call somebody a scum, look at your past and then really know who the scum is." Booker T's response on his Hall of Fame podcast. I actually heard the interview. He said what a lowlife I was, going to prison for robbing people. And I must say, I did go to prison for robbing people. I was a kid. And I think I've atoned for every piece of dirt I put down back in the day. I was a kid that made a mistake. He talks about being in a gang as a youth himself. What do gangs do? What do they normally do? They're normally not the pillars of society. I'm just... Oh, that was a nice little pop right there. I hope he tells us that story. I really do. He'll see a different side of me if he does tell a false story. That's totally not true. Because I've got facts, I've got receipts as far as everything I'm saying. If he tells a lie about me, he's probably going to end up in court. He's probably going to end up getting sued for defaming me. Oh, come on, Book. You can't sue him. I mean, I get it. You don't want to beat him up, but come on. You going to sue him? Don't sue him. He'll kick his ass. Don't sue him. I ain't got nothing anyway. What did he got? What did he do anyway? I don't think they put out any merchandise. He is the only guy. Well, he's probably not the only one. But for a guy who did something that was so groundbreaking, for him to not be liked at all is very interesting. Because usually, I mean, imagine having conversations about race in the WWE and not talking about how much Vince loves him some Ahmed Johnson. I mean, that's incredible. But I get it, because I think that it was a similar thing with Tony Atlas, because Tony Atlas tells the story all the time about how he was being pushed by Vince Sr. and Vince Jr. was a big fan of his too, but he was unreliable. I think he was doing drugs, and he was pretty mad about not being on WrestleMania 1. I think it was that where he told this story of, and there have been guys, and I think Lashley was probably like the one that if Vince would have had his druthers, he probably would have pushed Lashley as a top guy. But we can say that there were other guys who Vince dropped the ball on, Shelton Benjamin being another one, that it probably had something to do with his skin color, even though Shelton Benjamin couldn't talk for shit. But Ahmed Johnson was Vince McMahon's, it was his guy. If Ahmed Johnson hadn't continued to get injured and he had in so much seat, if he didn't have so much heat with all the people backstage, he might have actually been the first black world champion. I don't know when, but it might have actually happened. And Vince seemed to be, pushing him in that direction. So this is I'm surprised at this. But I'm not surprised at all that somebody called Ahmed Johnson a liar, because I remember he said that after he won the Intercontinental title, somebody had written nigger on his car or something like that, and he said it was Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels, and both of them was basically like, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? And nobody else apparently saw it either, so very, very strange decision making. Did you hear the story about Ahmed Johnson ditching a show he agreed to because the venue wouldn't pick him up and drive him to the venue? No, I didn't hear about that. I never heard about Ahmed. Like, only time I hear about Ahmed Johnson is I always think that these interviews are old, because I can't believe people are still having new interviews with Ahmed Johnson, knowing that he's actually working them. Like, he's clearly working people here at this point, right? He's not the only guy who's like this, but he comes across like, one of those Paul London guys where I've never heard of Ahmed Johnson say anything positive. Everything is racist, or somebody's racist and people don't like him, or they hate him, or all this kind of stuff, or he hates them, or whatever. Like, I knew him and Booker T didn't get along, but I didn't know, like, the challenge to fight. Like, what's up with that, though? Like, this is like the 5th wrestler to challenge Booker T to a fight. Right? Didn't Ryback challenge Booker T to a fight, too? And then Booker T accepted the fight and didn't go down? Oh, my God. What's up with these guys, man? Fight me, Book. Ike the Don says, who do you think is more influential, Trish or Lita? Well, I think it depends quite a bit on what you were looking for. At the time, Trish Stratus, what she was able to do was she made good on what WWE was trying to do with Sable. WWE tried to take somebody who looked great and turn them into a wrestler, but Sable resisted it at every single turn. She didn't like wrestling. She didn't want to wrestle. She didn't want anything to do with that stuff. They put the belt on her and had her in matches and all this kind of stuff because they were trying to make it work. She was resisting them every step of the way. She didn't want to do it. She didn't want anything to do with it. Trish Stratus, on the other hand, had all the same attributes as Sable physically, except for she was probably younger at this point. Big, gigantic boobs, lip filler, everything. Was willing to do, the storylines that was a little bit over the top. How, Sable had, wear a potato stack in the ring, and, even later she would do lesbian angles. That's after she sued WWE for sexual harassment. But Trish Stratus, of course, willing to do the bark like a dog thing. But ultimately, she took to the wrestling part. She actually didn't mind the wrestling part. So, in the history book, it's going to seem like Trish Stratus is the blueprint for the WWE female wrestler. Not any of the women who came before her, who were trained as wrestlers, and then WWE either used them as wrestlers or made them managers, like Medusa, Alundra Blaze. She was already a wrestler. She had done some managing, like in WCW when they didn't have a women's division. But she was a wrestler, wrestling on a wrestling show. She was not what Vince McMahon really wanted in terms of what he wanted to launch his division off of. All the women before Medusa barely even count these days. Who the hell talks about Rock and Robin? Sherry. 90% of her time in WWE was as a manager. Same thing with Luna Vachon. Wendy Richter was underappreciated for decades because of the way she left the company. Fabulous Moolah, her whole career has been destroyed. Same thing with Mae Young, and they were 70 years old when I was a kid. When you look at the blueprint, the John Cena of women's wrestlers, Trish Stratus is it. The Performance Center and everything they do now in terms of female WWE superstars is based off of Trish Stratus. Every inch of it. Instagram models, the Diva search, the whole 9 yards was based off of Trish Stratus. And then occasionally they'll get one who looks good in a bikini, who has some kind of athletic background, who actually gets the wrestling bug. And she gets somewhat good at it, And that's what they're looking for. They don't really care if she can't. It's the same thing, the same issue they have with the men they got with the women. It's just more pronounced with the women because there's fewer of them. It's like Vince didn't give a shit if the Ultimate Warrior was the worst wrestler of all time. He looked great. He's going to create a package that people will buy and people will be into it. And he's going to go with that. And that's what it was. He's done the same thing with the girls. I mean, the entire Divas division was basically models and stuff trying to wrestle. And some of them, they started getting better at it over time. Candice Michelle, Layla, Melina. They got better at it. They realized, of course, that you have to mix in some women's wrestlers who are actually trained and they know what they're doing. Which is what they did earlier with Trish Stratus by bringing in like Ivory and Molly Holly and Victoria. You bring in some women who actually know what they're doing, and you mix them in to make them look good, to make the girls that you want to push look good. It's the same formula they do with the guys. It's just more pronounced because the women is a smaller part of the roster. Now, in terms of Lita, it was different because Lita was doing things that guys had not seen women do in the United States. There was very little exposure to Joshi wrestling or female lucha libre in America at the time. So when you got Lita doing moonsaults and she's doing flying head scissors, it can be a little jarring because you're like, wait a minute. But she was sort of, I guess, the inverted version of China, where China, you seeing a girl do stuff you've never seen before, but it's power moves. She's picking guys up, she's hitting guys, she's power bombing guys, and all this kind of stuff. Which I think Sable may have powerbombed the man before China did, but, China's doing something different. She's breaking down that door. But Lita's doing, like, aerial moves. She also, while being a good-looking girl, was not classically a bikini model kind of girl. She was into, like, a certain scene, like the artistic, the bands, that kind of thing, like the whole thong bikini thing. You could see that was a little wink and a nod to her ECW elements, but she appealed a lot to the tomboy audience, and so you saw a lot of the girls who really kind of want to be wrestlers. They come from the Lita camp. I grew up watching Lita, so you get like Bayley. Bayley is in no way a Trish Stratus, but she's certainly on the Lita side. Now she can't do the acrobatics and all that stuff, but in terms of wanting to be considered a legitimate female wrestler, that's where that stuff comes from. WWE didn't really push like Alundra Blaze, plus she was gone through the entirety of the Attitude Era. So you're talking about these people who are in their early 30s or mid 30s or whatever. What they grew up watching was the late stage Attitude Era stuff, early Ruthless Aggression. Just like a lot of the girls now, like the Cora Jades and the Roxanne Perez's, they was watching AJ Lee who to me was not really all that groundbreaking. But she was living what they wanted to do, and they inspired her, or she inspired them rather. Lita was that for the AJ Lee generation. So it really depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about in terms of WWE, then it's Trish Stratus all day. She's the female John Cena. They're not letting Trish do anything else. She's got to be 50 or something now, and they still try to get her to come back to wrestle. They're even teasing her being in the Royal Rumble and wrestling more this year. So, and she knows that too. She's not a fool. So, but Lita, always going to be considered second fiddle because she wasn't as photogenic. She didn't have the gigantic boobs. She didn't get the super push. Lita didn't get huge matches at WrestleMania and all this kind of stuff. She had her nice little spots here and there, but she wasn't pushed like Trish Stratus was pushed. She wasn't pushed like Chyna was pushed. Lita is like a step or two above Victoria and Ivory, while Trish Stratus is being pushed like she should be on Mount Rushmore. So you have to. They're mentioned in the same conversation like Tupac and Biggie and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at how WWE treats them, there's no competition. Lita lost a belt last year, and they didn't even mention her again. she was not mentioned again, right? But Trish Stratus was still there 4 months, 5 months later. They used Lita to start an angle with Trish Stratus. So they're not even on the same level. But again, it depends on what you mean and what your thought process is on it. Do I remember a guy named Anthony Dwayne Wilson? No. I can't understand it. I don't know what that is. How can TK make the best out of this Adam Copeland run? I've always been an Edge and Cena fan. I think his run so far in AEW is okay, but I want to see him get one last main event run. It's from Mackay McClendon. Well, he's already starting off like you're saying. Like, how could he get the most out of it? Well, he could have done something from the beginning to make this thing matter. Get Ed that Edge came in specifically to work with Christian, and that's pretty much what he's doing. And I don't know if he's willing to do anything else, but that just seems to be where he is with it. He's just going to work with Christian, and that's going to be it. It definitely depends on where you want to go. It will be easy to just say we're going to throw him in the main event. He's going to work with Samoa Joe. He's going to work with all these other guys. He's Adam Cole's or whatever. And that would be a good usage of him. But part of the problem is that the company has struggled to find good creative for these people and intriguing stories and stories that matter. And look at what they did this week, by the way. So they went through all this trouble of Adam Copeland, Edge. Fuck it, let's go with Edge. Edge loses to Luchasaurus, and pretty much gives Christian the belt. He agrees to start from the bottom in order to earn a match with Christian. He agrees to do that. And then he ends up in a 8-man tag team match that meant nothing on the card. They won the match. He did nothing spectacular in it. He didn't even get the pin. And then he disappeared for the rest of the show. And that was it. This guy is a big star. At least that's what you're telling us, what you want us to believe. You don't utilize him in a way that a big star should be utilized. He didn't come out to stare down Samoa Joe, and tease a match with Samoa Joe. I don't think he's ever wrestled Samoa Joe. That could be incredible and interesting, especially to a passing WWE audience. People could be like, whoa, I know Samoa Joe, and that's Edge. I've never seen those two guys wrestle before, and you could build something out of that. No. You could have had Edge call Christian out. Nope. Gonna have Edge attack Luchasaurus backstage or something? Nope. Or even vice versa. Nope. They're not doing anything interesting to make people want to follow this thing week to week. This is what I guess this is the difference between professional wrestling and sports entertainment. Because when you talk about, well, look, it's not even the case because I've watched every kind of wrestling imaginable. Unless you're an absolute autist, the show should build upon each other week by week. Meaning that every week there should be new layers added to these stories. When weeks go by and nothing happens, and I'm not saying that they have to touch every week. I'm not saying they have to confront each other every week. I'm saying that something has to be revealed. Somebody has to yell at somebody. Somebody has to challenge somebody or something. Something has to happen every week. Okay? When you take weeks off, when you forget about it for a month or whatever the case may be, you're killing the momentum of the story. You're padding it. It's filler. What they did with that double story, they had Adam Cole come out and say the same thing he's already said. They're padding the story. That's padding. That's not furthering the story. That's why I said on the review, somebody should have come out and said, called those guys out, got in their faces. I don't want to hear this shit. You've already said that. I don't care what you wanted. You know, nobody likes you guys. Nobody wants to blah, 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 whatever. And there's 100 things you could have done. Like Christian has 4 people in that stable. You can't tell me that during this nothing 8-man tag, Nick Wayne couldn't have attacked Edge from behind the referee's back, just pulled his leg off the apron or something. And then Edge chased him off and he ended up leaving his team accidentally or something like that. There's 100 different things you could do to make this stuff interesting, to continue the story. And they choose not to do it. And then they say that you have too many stories. And it's like people forget about crap that you do all the time because nothing's ever furthered. So, I mean, I don't know. WG Phil says that Ahmed apparently lied about training with Booker T and Stevie, claiming he was friends who served time with Book and tried to blackmail him into leak story. What the? Oh, that's nutty. That's nutty. You think they're going to be a black world champion? Yeah, it's going to be Swerve. Swerve is going to be the first black world champion because if he doesn't, Tony Khan is going to get lambasted by social media and by Swerve probably for it not happening. And he's the closest one to it. He's the only one that's even in the conversation. It's strange. Will Hobbs was there from day one. He is like a year one AEW guy. He's jacked to the fucking gills. He can't get no chance, no shot whatsoever. Swerve showed up, 3 years later? Because Swerve been in AEW about 2 years maybe. And he's getting positioned as being a top guy. But that's that indie shit, though, you know. You can't find Will Hobbs on MLW or Defy Wrestling or whatever the fuck. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it. But yeah, it's going to be Swerve. And it might be by the end of the year, if we're being honest. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't beat Samoa Joe and end up losing the belt to Will Ospreay in England. Smart Money would probably not do that because you wouldn't want to make his run short. But I personally would probably have Swerve versus Will Ospreay and then put Swerve over in England. That's just because I'm a dickhead, though. And I really think that if either one of those two guys can make you some money, Swerve would probably do one. So I probably would put Swerve over. But I don't know. What is my thoughts on the 2-world title system in WWE? Do you think it should always be one world champion regardless of the brand split? In the case of a hard brand split, I don't like the idea of 2 world champions. It just doesn't make sense, especially if one of them is called the undisputed title. It's like, why? It's clearly a dispute. the company is so big that you probably can get away with 2 world titles. I don't see why you need to. I really don't. You know, the roster is bigger than it was before, I think. When they was in the 80s or whatever, they didn't have 2 world championships. In the 90s, they didn't. But I don't think they had as many wrestlers on the roster either. They didn't have as much TV time in the field either. And then you also don't want to do what they did at the beginning of the Ruthless Aggression era, which is have one champion bounce back and forth between both brands. Because then if this wrestler gets injured, then you're screwed. And then you have to figure out who main events the pay-per-views. You know, like it's 2 world champions. Seth Rollins is not main event a pay-per-view over Roman. So, and then for years you basically had the WWE title was basically it's like some version of like a Super Intercontinental Championship. You know, and then you had unfortunately the Eddie Guerreros and some of those runs from Kurt Angle that were not main event and pay-per-views. They were right in the middle of the show. And the World Heavyweight Champion was main event shows. And then it inverted when the WWE title went to Raw, and it was John Cena was the champion. And then the big gold belt became the Super Intercontinental title. And they were in the smack dab in the middle of the goddamn show because the main event guys on Raw were drawing better than the main event guys on SmackDown, which was by design, which is why every time somebody drew on SmackDown, they put them on Raw. And now they're doing the same thing again. It's the same situation. Seth Rollins is like a half step above the Intercontinental title. He does not feel like a world champion. That's the problem with having 2 world titles. You know? But at least, maybe it's going to end up like boxing. Maybe, which one of them is going to be like boxing? You know, it's going to be like a WBA, WBO, IBF, World Heavyweight Champion. And none of these belts mean anything at that point. You know, none of this shit means anything at that point, bro. So it's as long as the WWE Championship exists, that's the number 1 belt. You know, that's the number 1 belt in the history of the industry. I heard they was trying to rename it, and well, if you want to get me to piss on your grave, that'll be it. Rename that belt to it's going to be the Universal Championship. It's not going to be the WWE World title. I always thought it was neat, though, that Vince never said, like, the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. I think he did that in 2015. It was the first time he really started doing it. And I remember that became a whole thing where, when I was a kid, people used to say, Ric Flair is the real world champion because the WWF champion is the champion of the WWF. I think they even did that a whole thing with Bradshaw and Triple H, right? Where Triple H was like, I'm the world's champion. And Bradshaw was like, the WWE is the world. I remember that was kind of slick. You know, they always avoided calling it a world championship. And it didn't matter, and nobody cared because everybody knew what it meant. Hulk Hogan was the number 1 guy in the business. He didn't need to call himself the world champion. Who the fuck else do you know? You know, probably know Ric Flair, but, that's it. Let's see. What year did I get back into it? Fully 2005, right after WrestleMania 21. I was watching the shows off and on in 2004. I watched a little bit of JBL on SmackDown. I wasn't watching Raw at all, really. And I watched a little bit. I wasn't watching any pay-per-views. And I didn't watch the Royal Rumble that year, which was crazy because I loved the Royal Rumble. I had no interest. WrestleMania 20 had already passed when I started watching the shows. And then I think after WrestleMania 21, I started watching Raw again because Triple H had lost. And I wanted to see what was going to, how this Batista guy, which I didn't know a lot about. But really what got me fully back into wrestling, believe it or not, was FYE. Because FYE at the time, they were selling wrestling DVDs, and they were selling them at discount prices. So I was going and getting DVDs from events that I had not seen. Old SummerSlams. I think I think SummerSlam 2003 or something like that because I had never seen it. SummerSlam 2002 because I had never seen that. And they were like, because you could buy used DVDs. So I was going in there buying stacks of used DVDs. And that's what got me like right back in. Because once I started to catch up and started knowing everybody and stuff like that, it was good. But it was a struggle getting back into Raw. I could, because even though Triple H wasn't the champion, it wasn't a fun time either. Because I wasn't a big fan of John Cena either. But I actually enjoy SmackDown much better than Raw. Why do I think is the biggest reason? Well, because part of the reason is because they held on to the NWO so long they didn't build any new stars. So from a creative standpoint, because maybe we can talk about the business element. The business element is what it is. Once the merger happened, it was over. But from a creative standpoint, WCW started losing billions of dollars once the NWO thing never seemed to end. Once it just became NWO, NWO Hollywood, NWO Wolfpack, NWO Silver, NWO with Bret Hart in it, NWO with Jeff Jarrett. It's like, oh my God, no. The lack of creativity, no new stars, and the guys that they tried to push were boring. No personality. And that's when you realize the creative was a good piece of WCW that worked, but what really worked in WCW was having a bunch of familiar names. Was having Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper and Randy Savage. So for somebody like me, who I started watching wrestling in 1990, I love those guys. You don't understand that. Like, I love Randy Savage. I hated that the Macho Man wasn't on Raw. So you got him on WCW TV. So I get my Macho Man fix. I get to watch Hogan. I get to watch Piper, the guys I grew up watching. They're doing something slightly different. Oh, okay, that's new. But then you're kind of like, as I get older, they get older. They slow down, I get older, and they're not doing anything new. Macho Man started doing the Madness stuff, which was great. That was fun as hell. But they just never moved on. There was no second part to it. And even if you go back and look at it, you still can't even tell like what was the goal of the NWO, and then what was next. There was no next. There was nothing after that. It was just, well, the NWO thing happened. We still got to keep Hogan in the top spot. So, it's like, nah, man, this wasn't going to work out. Meanwhile, WWF was actually doing something interesting. They were doing something new. They were doing something different. And they were doing stuff that was so over the top that it was interesting. But then, it burnt me out because there was so much going on. And I was just like, oh my God, what the hell? Watching Raw wasn't a chore, but it was like I wasn't getting anything out of it. I didn't enjoy watching it in 1999 or 1998 as much as I had in like 1993. And part of that was in 93, I was 9 years old. In 98, I was 14. It's different, So it was a different concept. But I didn't enjoy it anymore. But WCW, yeah, the part of it was the NWO. They just held on to it too long. Should have let it die or mutate into something else. Like if they'd have kicked Hogan out after he lost the belt and Hall and Nash took over, and that is what led to Nash beating Goldberg, and the NWO was that, and Hogan was trying to get his revenge on them or something. Maybe that might have worked, but they should have immediately pivoted to something else. Sting should have been the guy again. And, maybe he held it until Goldberg got to a certain level, and then they started doing things with him. But the NWO, they wouldn't let it go. It makes no sense, but they refuse to let it go. Be locked in a padded room with whom? The Green Goblin or the Joker? Well, the Green Goblin, because at least there is some semblance of intelligence there. You know, he's not always a psycho. Like the Joker is always like he's not insane. You know, that's just his personality. That's who he is and what he is. Meanwhile, the Green Goblin is basically like a voice in Osborn's mind. You know, you're both likely to kill you, but I think you'll probably survive a little bit longer with the Green Goblin. And that's only because Osborn himself probably won't be all that interested in killing you as much as escaping the padded room. You know? While the Joker will kill you and then escape the padded room. TNA is basically a women's division show now under Scott D'Amore and intergender. Well, there's not as much women's wrestling on those programs as you think. You know, it's really not. It's certainly intergender though. It's certainly that. Do you think Trish retired early? Although she probably hit a ceiling with the Divas division, wasn't as bad with Beth, Melina, and AJ being there. Well, yeah, she clearly retired early because she's still in good shape now. So that tells you right now that she retired a little soon. But I think she did everything that she could do. There was nothing more for her to do. If Trish would have wrestled those years during the Divas era and wrestled like Candice Michelle and all of them, she probably wouldn't be in the position to wrestle now. But I think now that people are like, oh, they finally caught up, so Trish can wrestle them. I'm like, yeah, right. Trish is struggling to keep up with these girls today, but she's got star power, so it don't matter. Like she's got star power, so it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, this is that same lawsuit is the one that got dismissed earlier. So the guy refiled it, claiming that WWE stole everything from him. The guy's insane, and everybody knows it. I don't know why it was dismissed without prejudice, and then he was allowed to handwrite this new one. It's ridiculous. You're just gonna throw it out again, so whatever. How do you think all the young guys and women will do on the main roster in the upcoming years? Well, it depends on how long these people start to hold. How long these guys want to hold on. We could look at NXT right now and tell that there's quite a few guys that have tremendous upside and tremendous potential. The issue is going to be Triple H's creative, because you can say, like you can look at certain people in like Triple H's NXT and say they're doomed on the main roster with Vince. Johnny Gargano, doomed. Tommaso Ciampa, forget it. Io Shirai, forget it. Dakota Kai, like these are people he basically was on the verge of either he had already fired them, he wasn't going to re-sign them, or he was going to cut them anyway, or he already had. But now you got the inverse. Now you're worried about guys who might have some kind of potential getting cut because they're not improving fast enough. And it's like, well, you're taking people fresh out to, like, not everybody is a Braun Breaker. And he's not just a genetic, freak. He grew up in the business. He got his uncles and his dad teaching him little things here and there around the tables. He's sipping morning coffee, giving them ideas and shit. Like, he's Randy Orton, all right? You can't screw that up. Everybody else is going to be the problem. Like a guy like Obafemi. What do you do with him on the main roster that he's not going to turn into Omos? How are you going to present him in a way that he's going to be able to last 10 years? I know people are arguing about whether the guy's 22 or 25. It don't matter. Trust me, it don't matter. His mama say he's 25. Everybody on Twitter thinks he's 22. I don't know how old the fucking guy is, all right? All I know is he's got size. The ring stuff will come. His promos are interesting. Got interesting facial expressions. He's different. He stands out. How is Triple H going to utilize that? That's going to be my question. Because I'm looking at a lot of people now, and I'm saying to myself, bro, Triple H is underperforming. I hate to go to, seem biased because they are some of my favorites, but look at last year in the Street Profits. He's underutilizing them. Karrion Kross, he's underutilizing them. Karrion Kross has been on the roster for 2 years, bro. Like this guy was already like 36 or something like that when he rehired him. Last year he's in his 40s. So if I think that if in 5 years, just 5, Lashley's probably going to be gone. AJ Styles probably going to be gone. Randy Orton will probably be gone. CM Punk will certainly be gone. I think the only person will probably still be around is The Miz. And then we'll see. But then at that point, Triple H will probably have installed Johnny Gargano and Ciampa and all of them as top level stars. And they're going to be having a lot of bullshit matches. And nobody's going to like the shows. But he's going to have to smarten up. Because some of those kids got it. Or they got something and it's that you can build off of. But they're not going to get the pressure. That's what Vince applied. Vince applied the pressure. It was a sink or swim situation. Either you got it or you didn't. And I think Rick Boogs was talking about that, where he was criticized by this regime for not being good enough in the ring, and he was like, "What the fuck? It's not real. We can do whatever we want," because that's how Vince thinks about it. I don't have to get in there and have 30-minute matches. Like that's the magic of this thing, right? You can work to my strengths. Why the hell would I want to go in there and roll around with a guy? And that's not what I do. It's not even what I look like. I don't look like I should be rolling around with a guy. And he was right. So this guy said like he's going to quit the business or something like that. Like that's a shame. You just go to TNA, man. Go to TNA. I'm not saying because TNA is going to be so much better, but at least he's going to have the opportunity to do something different. He's going to have the opportunity to do something different. The Triple H, I definitely am afraid of people who don't have the in-ring ability, but they have everything else. Because Triple H is going to be his mid-Atlantic loving self and fuck around and ruin everything. I'm so scared that WrestleMania 45 is going to be something so stupid that's going to make me not want to watch it. I'm actually feeling quite safe for 40, 41, 42. I'm going to get deeply concerned when Punk's gone, Roman's gone, Orton's gone, Styles is gone, Rollins is on his way out, and it's WrestleMania 46. And the main event of it is not Braun Breaker versus, Obafemi or something like that. It's, we're asking questions about whether The Rock is going to come back again or something stupid like that. Have I seen the TNA title belts? I did. I saw them. All of them look the same as far as I'm concerned, except for the women's belt, which is white. Most of them look the same. They have the same plate. Tommy Dreamer is fat. They showed that picture of him with the digital media belt. That dude is fat. That's a fat guy, man. I don't know what he's doing. I don't understand why he's still wrestling. I don't think he needs money. He's fat, though. And somebody needs to tell Tommy Dreamer, stop. Stop it. You're very wide. You put stretch marks on my screen when you did that. Stop doing stuff like this. You're very fat. From one fat guy to another, you need to stop it. Get a Stairmaster. Get off the business. Your thoughts about Bobby Lashley group called The Pride? Ugh. I don't think so. They better not call it that. That's gay. WG Phil, what do you think about Swerve's going to end up having WWE mid-card world champion where he's not important and just holding the title for a short period? That's kind of where I am with it. I'm kind of he's going to be in a holding period with the belt. Like if he wins the belt from Samoa Joe, he'll have a short run and lose it to dipshit in Wembley. And that's gonna, you were the first black world champion, you got there, but you ain't gonna have a hell of a run. You're not gonna have a really good run. And then that's gonna be the complaint, because he got to be the champion, but he didn't really do anything. But when you look at it, Tony Khan doesn't know how to book champions. Look what he's doing with Eddie Kingston right now. Look what he did to Hangman as soon as Hangman won the belt. Look what he did to MJF as soon as MJF won the belt. He doesn't know how to get that momentum and keep it. Vince used to kill people's momentum because he felt like the story was over. And then it was time to basically transition to something else. Like the Daniel Bryan thing was probably the most glaring. As soon as he won the belt, right smack dab back in the mid card. You're like, whoa, why is he wrestling Kane all of a sudden? They did the same thing to Benoit. As soon as Benoit won the belt, they was like, oh, he's not a draw. The draw was the story. Now the story is over. He's just going to basically be the guy who's going to hold the belt until we find somebody for him to drop it to. And that's exactly what happened. And pretty much the same thing was going to happen to Daniel Bryan, but he got hurt. So I can see the same thing happening to Swerve. He's going to probably win the belt just to say he was the first Black World Champion, and he earned it, and he deserved it, and he was the most over. And then he's going to drop it, and that's going to be it. Toodles. Who knows what happens after that? Does he get it back? Probably not. G Coalition brother, am I the only one who's absolutely done with the AEW? And if they actually follow through with the Bang Bang Scissor Gang? I'm floored that they even go with that. Like that was humorous. I'm not even gonna lie. It's silly. I'm not done with it yet. It's boring, but I'm not done with it yet. I barely watch Collision now though, because there's nothing that comes out of it worth talking about. So you're sitting there like, what is to discuss? Like that's the thing about WWE products. That even if it's bad, it's usually something to discuss coming out of these shows. There's nothing coming out of AEW shows worth talking about, really. Except missed opportunities. That's about it. Tony Khan loves putting over the shorter wrestlers. When was the last time they ever lost a match? Who are we talking about here? The brand split doesn't work in this era. It only worked in the 2000s because you had all those stars from the Attitude Era, WCW, ECW, and coming up stars from the Ruthless Aggression Era. None of those guys fucking mattered, though. I mean, the Ruthless Aggression Era, like the point of it, the brand split, wasn't because it had all these guys. Most of those guys weren't even there yet when they decided to do it. It was, we need to create competition. That's why Vince did it. Because they killed WCW. TNA did not have its legs underneath it yet. They need to be able to push the creative team to create better content. So it was basically Raw versus SmackDown. And however you can make that happen is having exclusive wrestlers on both sides. Make your show as best as you possibly can. And then Vince started trying to smush everything together again. But it works today because the roster is so big that you can do it. Because you're selling the TV rights of SmackDown and Raw separately. You're selling Raw, SmackDown, and NXT as separate entities. It makes sense for them to have separate rosters. You know, if everybody was like, if you had to put everybody on all three shows, how would it be any different from, how would Raw and SmackDown be any different? How would Raw, SmackDown, and NXT be any different? At least right now, they're different products, you know? And I enjoy that aspect of it. If AEW were smart, they would do something similar. Now, maybe not 3 world champions, but if you were going to divide your roster up into 3s, and because you have such a large roster, and you could say this is our Dynamite roster, our Collision roster, and our Rampage roster. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I understand it. You know, they don't have the star power. They don't have the good enough creative. They don't have a creative team, for the record. It's just Tony Khan. So it's already a problem. If Tony Khan was to just be a little bit humble and say, I am going to book my baby, which is Dynamite. I don't care what you do with Collision. I don't care what you do with Rampage. Dynamite and the pay-per-views are mine. You can book whatever you want on Collision or Rampage. Because who knows, somebody else might actually make these shows more interesting. But since it's Tony Khan booking everything, it's all the same, and nothing is mattering. Right? And you're seeing sometimes the same people multiple times a week, and they're still not doing anything. It's just wrestling and nonsense matches, which is sad. But again, it's the nature of the beast that we're dealing with here. The Bucks returned last night and no crowd reaction. Boy, that was funny, wasn't it? How humorous was that? They got no reaction. They earned it, though. They earned it. Less titles just means less people get reactions. Reasons to shine is fake. Stop overthinking it. Yeah, but you also want to make sure that even if you have more championships, more people get a chance to shine. But you have to understand also that these things, even as props, they still have to matter, right? That's the thing about wins and losses. Like, wins and losses don't matter in wrestling, but they have to matter. Everything with wrestling is a paradox. Wins and losses don't matter because you're not really winning and losing. But you certainly want to win more than you lose. Even in that predicament, you want to be the guy that wins more than he loses. Even in movies, there's people who put in their contracts that they don't want to get killed, they don't want to die, they don't want to ever lose a fight in a movie. Because it's all about perception and about making money. Being seen as the star. Being seen as the guy who kicks ass or whatever. From that perspective, it's a shoot, brother. You know, from that perspective, it's a fucking shoot. But you're right. But you can't give everybody a belt. It's just not reasonable. If everybody's a champion, nobody's a champion. But you can, if you operating off of 3 separate brands, have 3 separate sets of championships. The question then becomes when everybody comes together. That's what the thing about the Ruthless Aggression era is. Every brand had its own pay-per-views. NXT has their own pay-per-views. So them having their own world champion, their own women's champion, their own tag team champions makes sense. They have their own pay-per-views. The reason why it kind of doesn't make sense with Raw and SmackDown is because they share pay-per-views. So now you are having Roman and Seth on the same show, and you have to prioritize who goes first and who main events, who's going to get the bigger match, you know, that kind of stuff. And it matters. The U.S. title and the Intercontinental title, they overlap. In the Ruthless Aggression era, there wasn't a lot of that. These guys, separate brands, separate pay-per-views, separate championships. They were run like separate promotions for a short time anyway. And I'm saying, and I said it before on this channel, it's not the worst idea in the world. It doesn't cost them anything anymore. But if they were to do that, it would definitely probably destroy business. Because you're now trying to double up. But it was rough before because you're trying to get people to buy pay-per-views, individual Raw, individual SmackDown. It's easier now because these events just go up on Peacock. You're not paying any extra for them. So you technically could have a Raw pay-per-view and a SmackDown pay-per-view in the same month. Technically, you could have Monday Raw pay-per-views in April or May, and then a SmackDown pay-per-view in June or July if you wanted. Technically, you could do that. But I don't know if that would work long-term. I just don't think it's a long-term goal. But it'll work for the long term. It's more of a short-term idea. But like I said, NXT is working, doing its own thing. The problem is you just can't have everybody with belts. Do you think it's time to break up tag team titles because I can't see the Judgment Day show up on SmackDown? And that's the problem with having one set of belts. You know, the women's titles don't go to NXT at all. And they think they haven't popped up on SmackDown either. So you can't share because the creative keeps forgetting, oh, those belts are over there. And it's like, or they'll say, well, Raw is 3 hours, so they need the belt. You know, and then you're like, oh, so why do we have one set? You know, like just create another fucking set of belts. It's really dumb. And then you end up in the situation that I'm talking about. 3 sets of women tag team belts or something like that. 3 sets of tag team championships. And I would probably call them something different, but that's why I think, like, everybody calling themselves a world champion or universal tag team champions, I guess, or whatever the case may be. But you can do that, I guess. But, those belts are not. Those belts don't mean anything anyway. To be fair, when they did say the full World Wrestling Federation in front of the championship before changing the name, that's true. I love the FYE. I really do. I love it so much. The NWO Silver, NWO with Bret Hart, and NWO Judgment was all the same run. It didn't feel like it to me. It didn't feel like it to me. All that shit looked like it was different. As far as I'm concerned. I was like, this is awful. But yeah, NWO Silver was technically with Bret Hart and Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett's terrible, by the way. God, he's awful. What the fuck? They'll probably get another Tony Khan meltdown by the end of next week. He said, I really loved your video on the criticism of the elite and the lack of innovation, especially the Bucks. I've enjoyed Hangman's recent stuff with Swerve, but the Bucks need to innovate was spot on. Yeah, I mean, they're boring. I don't know what they're doing now. They went and grew mustaches. I don't understand the point of that. But there's dorks online who truly believe that everybody just hates the Young Bucks because they prove that you can be successful without WWE. Like, nobody cares about their success. People just don't enjoy their work. And fewer and fewer people are enjoying their work because every time they have a match, it looks like they're doing the greatest hits of stuff that they've already done. And it's different from Flair. It's different from Bret Hart. All these guys had routines. We know that. It's interestingly enough, though, not a complete and total sidetrack. I'm reading a book on Buddy Rogers, and it talks about his routines and how he would come up with these finishes. And he basically did them all over the country. But almost none of these matches were televised. So every time he did something different, did something that was the same as something he had done before, it was the audience had never seen it before. Because he would do it in Toledo, and then he'd do it in New York, and he'd do it in Los Angeles, and it would be like completely new shit, and people would be like shocked. You can't do that today. Everything we've already seen the Meltzer driver 100 times, right? We've already seen that 100 times. What more can you do? We've been watching Meltzer drivers for 15, 20 years now. It's not that impressive anymore, And then you're not wrestling like back when they were in TNA. Almost everybody was smaller. They were wrestling the Motor City Machine Guns. It's believable that you could, run around the Motor City Machine Guns and flip all over them and stuff. But then you start wrestling like super heavyweight guys, and those dudes are like just standing there just to catch you and all this. You're no selling their offense. There's no drama. There's no tension. There's no intensity. Your gimmick is that you do the shit that you do. They need to go away. And I think they probably need to break up. Like, legit. Like, that probably would be like the one thing that you could do when it comes to the Young Bucks that would probably matter. Is you probably need to separate them. Nick Jackson is completely unproblematic. I was thinking about that today. Somebody told me, I think it was on Twitter or it was an email or something, where they said rank the Hardys and the Young Bucks from likable to unlikable. And I said, clearly, Jeff is number one, most likable. Number two, Nick Jackson. Because he doesn't say anything. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there. 3, Matt Hardy. Because he's annoying as shit, but at least he's Matt Hardy. He's done something. At the bottom, Matt Jackson. He's got hella heat with me. And if you could just separate the Young Bucks and let Matt Jackson be a solo act, he could get heat by himself. And it might actually force him to do something different. If I was in that AEW locker room, that'd be the first thing I'd say. I want to break up the Young Bucks. It's something nobody's ever done before. And I'm not saying they have to fight each other. I'm just saying they should each go their own way. Amicably, if possible, if that's what you want to do. Matt Jackson just stand in the middle of the ring. I want to be world champion. I've been world tag team champions with my brother. We've done that 100 times. We've traveled the world, blah, 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 blah. I want to be world champion. and just try to do that and try to see if that could be interesting. It's not going to be because he sucks, but who knows? You never know. Like, you have the opportunity to do all kinds of stuff in wrestling. I never would have thought there would have been a time where the Usos would be solo acts. I never would have thought that would have occurred. I'm pretty sure in the 80s, nobody thought the Hart Foundation would ever be solo guys. They need to do something. But putting on black suits and white suits, like, that's no good. Have I ever seen the 2003 Cartoon Network Teen Titans? No. No, I don't. No, I didn't watch it. Do you feel like DC used the Joker for shock value? I think they just overused him in general. He's just overutilized in general. There's too much Joker content on TV. Rachel Buck, what do you think of the Street Profits and Bobby Lashley's new tag team name? They're going with the Pride. What do you think of that? I think it's gay. And I think if those guys have any kind of any pool, they need to throw that out and get that tossed. That's no good. It's not just because of pride parades and everything. It's just stupid. It doesn't really work. The pride of what? Lions? Are they lions? Is that what they're supposed to be? I don't know. Yeah, Trish Stratus retired, young, very few injuries. She got out what she could. It was smart. She made a ton of money. Why is she hanging around? Hang around for what? She's still in good shape. She probably ain't got CTE, at least not yet, but she's working on it. What tag team name would I give Karrion Kross, Scarlett, and AOP? I don't know. Doomsday Clock. How about that? That's the name of that really terrible Jeff Johns Watchmen story. Call them Doomsday Clock. How about that? To be fair, Ciampa was getting pushed under Vince. Well, he was getting a look because he was small and he was shredded. But that was about it. I like Tony D'Angelo and Stacks with that hot girl and the mom. Yeah, I like them too. I think Tony D'Angelo had a bigger upside with Vince in control because that character works. That character works. I wonder if they're going to bring the D'Angelo family up as a unit, though. They should. But you see what they did with Legado del Fantasma. They took Electro Lopez out. So you think that they bring up the D'Angelo family, then they leave Stacks or leave Rizzo behind? I wouldn't do that. Her accent is crazy though. I mean that accent is crazy. Which one do you see being at WrestleMania, Roman and Rock or Roman and Cody? I think we've been over that 100 times. I don't even want to think about that question no more. I don't even want to consider it no more. Oba is 22. He's born 2000. Okay, good. Somebody must have looked up his collegiate wrestling date of birth and stuff. I didn't look it up, but I saw somebody claim to be his mom, said he was 25. And I was like, I don't know if that's his mom or not. But I know everybody bouncing around talking about it. WrestleMania should be the only stadium show. Mania feels more special. Like, you can do other stadium shows, but it's people like John Albert. I think you should have every other show be a stadium show. Like, you can't do that. You don't have the star power to pack 50, 60,000 seats every other month. You can't do that. Like, this is going to be a very special occasion with this Australia thing. Otherwise, I would not run a stadium show anywhere near WrestleMania. But since they're doing it in a foreign country, it can work. Because you're not drawing 50, 60,000 from the same pool of people. You're drawing it from a different pool of people. So you could do it. You could do it if it's going to be in England or Australia or Saudi Arabia or whatever. Yeah. But it's not going to work out, I don't think. I don't really like stadium shows anyway. And I think SummerSlam last year really changed my opinion of stadium shows because they're so big. That there's a lot of people in there who can't see shit. Like, when I went to WrestleMania in a stadium, I still had a pretty good time. I probably had more fun then than I did at SummerSlam. And I still had fun at SummerSlam too. I was just kind of like on the show, and I was kind of aggravated about the experience. But stadium shows are good as long as you can feel the building. If you can feel the building, it's fine. I really don't need it to be a stadium show. You know, I'm actually thinking WWE should do more interesting venues. Like, and here's the thing. I think we was talking about this about Daly's Place. I'm not saying that WWE should run Daly's Place, but it looks different. You know, it looks different. It's not small, but it's not huge. Like WWE could run some venues that look interesting. Like they could run, let's say, the ECW arena. They could run that with like NXT or something like that. They could run the Manhattan Center with like NXT or something like that, and it will look different, and it will look cool. The way WWE builds some of these things, especially some of the interiors, a lot of the shows look the same, and you can't tell one stadium show from another. Sometimes you need to have things look a little bit different. I wouldn't, say we're going to have SummerSlam out of out of a ballroom. I wouldn't say that, but I would look to maybe do special episodes of SmackDown out of a smaller venue. Just pack it. A smaller venue, a more intimate audience, to give you the old school vibe, like the old Raws, where the crowd was still pretty close. It'd be good just for something different. That's the one thing I do like about the international thing is that they will be forced to do something different. It's funny that Cross is underutilized, yet he's Triple H's prize pupil. Yeah, I'm interested in what's going on with that. My problem with Triple H is he prioritizing ring over characters, and that say what you want about Russo, but at least he focused on entertainment value. Russo was awful, bro. No, he was too far into the entertainment value. He didn't care about any of the matches. He didn't care about any of the outcomes. He didn't care about the stories. He didn't care about anything. It was just do stuff. Now and doing stuff is fine until you try to figure out even retroactively why this stuff was happening and where was it going? Like, what's the purpose of it? And you can have a story, but what is your planned finish? Like I've asked people this before. What was the logical finish to the story about the chopping of the PP? What was the logical finish to that story? The logical finish is Val Venus beats up the husband, which was the idea, right? She was the husband of the Kaientai leader, right? So Val Venus is the baby face. He's getting his dick cut off. And we're supposed to cheer the adulterer or the husband that's getting revenge? Who's the baby face? Who's the heel? Who should go over in the end? Is Val Venus going to get beat up by Taka Michinoku? And then where do they go from there? What is the next level? Like, what's the next step? It wasn't any thoughts about that. It was just doing shit. Can AEW survive 5 years? Well, it depends on if they get a deal or not. If they get a cable deal, then yeah, they'll be surviving for 5 years. They have the money. Tony Khan could probably pay to have the thing running for the next 15 years with his own money. It's about whether he would want to, and about whether it would be worth doing. Shorter guys like Sammy, Jack Perry. Oh yeah, whatever. I'm not a big fan of that Jack Perry fellow. When do you see Ricky Starks? Well, as soon as his contract is over, because I'm pretty sure Cody's already told him about it. I'm pretty sure Cody's about to throw a life raft to all of his friends in AEW, and I saw that coming. That's why, all of a sudden, Cody's friends started leaving. Kazarian, QT Marshall, all of a sudden, Cody's friends is leaving. They're taking off. You're like, I don't want him in WWE. I don't want QT Marshall or Sean Spears. They suck so bad. Do you really think that AEW will stay with Warner Brothers? Well, Lightshed Partners, who were the guys who were pushing Vince to sell, those guys think Warner Brothers are going to end up getting Raw. If that's the case, you could say forget it to AEW. But considering I do believe that AEW is probably a Warner property in terms of I think they have ownership in the company. They would probably need to sell that ownership back to Tony, more than likely, and he would then have to go somewhere else. That could be tough in terms of business. That could be tough. I don't know. That's a good question. You know, it's the question everybody's going to be asking themselves. They're going to be very concerned about Tony Khan, and I'm more worried about his mental health. If they do get kicked off of Warner Brothers, I'm definitely going to be concerned about his mental health. One of my favorite cartoons, 90s Spider-Man, 90s X-Men, Batman the Animated Series. When I was really young, I was into Thundercats, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What else? Of course, you know, Dragon Ball. When I got a chance to watch it, I watched Dragon Ball. I watched the Sonic cartoon a little bit. It was like right near I was too old to be watching Saturday morning cartoons. It was like right there. Pokemon too was right there too, where I was kind of like, maybe am I too old for Pokemon? But I got caught up in the craze. I had the games and everything too. WWE working with New Japan? Probably not. The draft was so good in 2000. Cena getting drafted to Raw with the crowd going crazy. That's the thing. Like the draft was actually pretty good. I wonder if they're gonna do a draft this year. You know, they should do the draft the right way. Everybody's in the pot, and we pick names out of a tumbler. Did I hear about Eric July and Yellow Flash teaming up against EBS? No. I knew EBS got into it with Eric July, though. I heard about that. It says something about, it's a lot about EBS. You know, he's a drama queen, isn't he? I noticed that a long time ago. He's a real drama queen. That's why I kind of backed off of that whole thing. It seemed like, you know, if you have any measure of success. I think when he got into it with Doug Ernst, I was like, yeah, what the hell? Doug Ernst barely even talks to anybody. And he was getting into it with EBS. I'm like, for what? You know, it was ridiculous. And like, this is pointless. And I was never a big fan of EBS anyway. So, and Yellow Flash is always okay with me. And I haven't followed a lot of Eric July lately, but I support him. And I really was never really a supporter of EBS, his Frog book, or anything else, or his YouTube channel, or anything that he does. Really, just never got into the cult idea of EBS. Why do you think it took nearly 5 years for many fans to realize AEW booking is bad? Well, part of that was the rose-colored glasses. You know, I think the idea that Tony Khan was giving people what they wanted. And then the people started having divisions about what they want. You can't make everybody happy. And in trying to make everybody happy, he made everybody miserable. Because he didn't do what he wanted to do. He did what he wanted everybody else to, following what the crowd wanted. And he should have did what he wanted to do. He should have sat down, CM Punk and the Elite, forced them to work together. And if somebody would have sent their lawyers, we're going to have lawyers, I'd have said, all right, you're not coming back until you're ready to talk. Until you're ready to be an adult. You're not coming back. Period. I don't give a fuck who you are. Punk, Bucks. I'm not talking to your attorneys. I call them on the phone. I send them a text. You're suspended until which time you decide that you're going to be a professional and come to fucking work. And we're going to get this thing done. And I even at the time I said, okay, Collision might fix it, but they do joint pay-per-views, and it was going to be. And as soon as they started doing joint pay-per-views, it was over. And there it is. CM Punk was firing, well, not firing, but having guys banned and all this kind of stuff. It's like, bro, this thing ain't working out. It ain't working out at all. I think you said you think the Bucks are mocking Vince McMahon's new look. Well, maybe. I was thinking the same thing, but they're so unlikable that basically I just went into immediately they look like, some kind of distaff version of Mario and Luigi. Matt Hardy version when he was a cruiserweight and trying to be the cruiserweight champion, now that was fun. That absolutely was fun. 2024 ain't looking so good for the Hardys. Yeah, and then Jeff is complaining. Oh, he said we're banished to the dimension of Rampage. I'm pretty sure he got a phone call from Danielson. Yeah. Please take that down. Do you think SmackDown will go back to Tuesday nights in the fall? No. I think that part of the deal is probably going to be keeping it on the night that it's most successful on. Because I don't think CW will want SmackDown moved to Tuesday, and they have NXT on Tuesdays. Why would they do that? Why would you have WWE product going against WWE product in a primetime spot? That doesn't make sense. So they're gonna keep SmackDown on Friday, or maybe put it on Thursdays. Maybe Thursday is fine. It's just it kicks Impact in the ass, but nobody cares about Impact really. I don't. If Raw is not going to be on Monday, there really is no other day to put it on. Except for you can put it on Thursday. Like the only open day really is Thursday, unless you want to go head up with AEW, which I'm pretty sure they wouldn't care about. They probably wouldn't mind moving Raw to being head up with Dynamite and stomping them into oblivion every goddamn week. I already told you when do I expect Rick when his contract is up. Why do you keep asking the same questions? What are your thoughts on AEW playing Chris Jericho's theme while he was brawling? I thought it was humorous. Because the boos weren't really even there to warrant it. It was just loud and obnoxious and awkward. It was... Of course, it does beg the question, are they going to do it again? They did it for the Anarchy in the Arena spots, where Moxley was wrestling and they played Wild Thing in rotation over and over again. Are they going to do that with Judas? He'll have Jericho wrestling in the ring, and Judas is going to play on a loop for 15 minutes. They're gonna Judas the fuck out of everybody. You like the song, huh? How would you book Cora Jade on the main roster? Well, first you got to get her booking in currently, right now, better. What is Cora Jade? That's a big problem that we got right there in NXT. Who is she? Like, how does she stand out from the crowd? She's got big tatas now. But how is she? What is her character? She picks fights. She doesn't need to cheat to win, though. And at least when she was Skater Girl with the skateboard and everything, she had a little bit of a personality. Not, she's got more personality now because she can talk now, but she had a little bit of an identity. Like, what is her identity now, except for High School Mean Girl, which applies to like half the girls in the locker room. I don't know. Like, you'll have to come up with a way that she stands out and does something different, and a voice, and you got her look. Her look is coming together. But if she's gonna be like all tomboyish and stuff like that, then she wouldn't get titties for her. If she's gonna be, tomboyish, hat to the back and all that kind of stuff, then what the hell you go get new titties for? But if she's gonna get she's gonna break out the tattoos and the new tits, she's gonna be kind of sexy. Okay, where are we going with this? Because we already did this with Toxic Attraction. You got Gigi Dolan walking around half naked all the time, and all this kind of stuff. You got to find some way of it standing out. And I don't see them doing that yet. They got to get her presentation together. She's still very young, though, so they got plenty of time. She got potential, too. So they got plenty of time. What are your thoughts on the main event Mafia and TNA? Do you think TNA made the mistake by adding Samoa Joe to the group later on and kicking Sting out? Um, I think most people like the main event Mafia. It was fun. I love anything that had Steiner in it. I can tell you. Steiner yelling at Kurt Angle about Samoa Joe being fat. It's one of my favorite TNA moments. It's fat! This fat son of a bitch. Booker T doing commentary for his own brawl scene. It was great. It was great. The main event Mafia was very funny. It couldn't last forever, but it was funny. That's what happens when you. It was basically just them ripping off of the Billionaires Club from WCW and actually doing it in an entertaining way. Because the Billionaires Club in WCW sucked. That sucked balls, and it was no good. Makai McClendon, I'm enjoying the Fallon Henley Tiffany Stratton feud. It's a great way of utilizing the two women with most potential in NXT. Why does HBK utilize his women better than TK or Triple H? Because he has, I think, because it's more of a let's just see what happens kind of attitude, more so than Tony Khan really won't give the girls a chance. He not really. And Triple H is more is dealing with the main roster. I think if he was on NXT, he probably would give them more of a chance too. But I think Sean, the NXT idea when it comes to women, well, wrestling in the last 2 or 3 years has been, this is NXT. We can do whatever we want because we operate off a WWE budget. We don't really have to turn a profit, So let's just go out there and do kooky shit, and then and then they do it, and then sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's cringe, but they're doing stuff. They throwing new characters at the wall, and the characters are colorful and they're weird, and the wrestlers are different. They're younger, and you've never seen them before. You don't know who they are, but that actually has an element of, hey, this guy could one day main event SummerSlam, or this guy could be a good Intercontinental Champion one day, or something like that. Granted, he doesn't go to jail for like sex trafficking or some dumb shit or whatever the fuck they get in trouble for doing. Frankie left before Cody left. Wait a minute. Was Frankie gone before Cody left? Let me try to remember. I know he was doing stuff with Impact, but he wasn't fully gone yet. Because remember, they allowed him to go and do Impact for a while, and then he officially left and did Impact full time. I know he was on loan to Impact for a short time. I think it was around the same time. I think Daniels did something in Impact at that time too. But I know for sure that he was on loan to Impact for a short time before he went over there full time and actually basically quit AEW. So I think Chris Jericho. I don't think Chris Jericho did a great job for his legacy, but I think the media mostly destroyed his legacy over the last couple of years. Good evening. Did I see what Tony Khan did by making Jinder Mahal popular? Yeah, I mean, everybody knows what he's doing. He's a goof. He was hoping. Why was everybody hoping Jack Perry would be the devil? It would have got a lot of heat, that's for sure. But the question would have been, would it have gotten the right kind of heat? Which is the question. Because you putting this guy who everybody hates in a top spot, but at the same time, isn't that where a guy who everybody hates should be? Where else can you put him except for in a top spot? Who was worse, 90s Eric Bischoff or Vince Russo in WWE? Oh, okay. Russo's, let's say Bischoff, he had a plan for the NWO, and he went through with that plan and ends up being very successful. The issue is he never had a plan B. Vince Russo never really finished any of the stuff he started in WWE because he quit and he kept on having so much of that shit go on for so long. He just never had any end games planned for his stories. There was never anything planned on how McMahon and Austin were going to end. How was that going to end? How do you end that feud? And that was a question I kept asking myself, is like, what was formerly the end of the feuds when they became friends? You know, they shook hands, and so Vince kind of wins in the end because he got his corporate champion. It was still Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was kind of like a win-win situation. Steve Austin got to continue being himself to a degree. And Vince got his corporate champion out of Stone Cold Steve Austin to a degree. So it was like a 50-50 thing. And after that, Austin took off. And then that kind of ended the angle. They revisited it for, one-off appearances. Well, Austin would get a stunt. Well, Austin would give Vince a stunner or something like that. But there was never a proper blow-off to the McMahon-Austin feud. And that part of that is because there was probably never one planned. How do you end that feud? He's beaten Vince 100 times. Maybe he should have shaved Vince's head. He did, but maybe later. People over 40 calling EBS Caesar and constantly defending him is strange. But God can burn all his friends in 4 years. Yeah, that's when I really stopped paying a lot of attention. Is basically you had to swear fealty to EVS, and I thought that was weird. Kind of like these guys. I thought you guys just like comic books. Like I didn't know we was joining a cult. I thought everybody just liked comic books. And then it became EVS is like the God Emperor, and I was like, I don't know about that one, dog. I'm gonna play the back on that one. And I saw people kind of peel away from him too, and kind of saw all that coming. But every time he's in the middle of something, I'm never surprised. It seems to be that's how his his channel is generating money is through drama. He became a drama YouTuber, not really a comic book YouTuber. Darren Gordon-Hill says it's 3:30 a.m. Getting an Uber to the airport. Can I get an early birthday shout out and a safe trip? Good wishes, please. My first solo trip abroad. Well, good buddy, Darren Gordon-Hill, happy birthday. As a matter of fact, my brother's birthday, Brother Slade the first. His birthday is January the 12th. So, happy birthday. Hopefully you are safe. Where are you going? Make sure you use a condom and do not drink anything out of open bottles. Just don't do it. So it's going to work out. Hope you have fun, man. All right. We're going to wrap this thing up. It ended up being on here longer than I thought. I said 30 minutes. That was an hour ago. But I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Thank you all. I'll talk to you guys later.